I want to welcome everybody to tonight's next in our series of voter education. As we all know, everything relates to voting. What the issues you care about can be made better or worse depending on the people that you elect. And so tonight we're going in honor of Banned Book Week, which started yesterday. We are having a program entitled The Attack on Librarians and also Banned Books, trying to help us understand better the issues related to that and how it affects Alabama. And we're so proud to have such an esteemed panel here tonight with us. And I wanted to just let everyone know that the Alabama League of Women Voters is partnered with the Alabama Library Association so that we can be stronger together as we ensure the freedom of our libraries and that democracy is working for all of us, no matter who we are, and that we continue to maintain the freedom to read. As we work together over this next legislative session, the League of Women Voters this year, we have set priorities. And one of those priorities is related to libraries and all the attacks that we've been seeing. And so we're going to be looking to Jessica to let us know when the Alabama Library Association issues a call to action. What is that call to action? And gives us talking points. And then we'll go back and compare that to our positions, because we already know that what's happening right now, we know that we're supported by the issues that the league has in being able to take action, but we always go back and check what the call to action is against what our positions are. And at that point, we will issue a call to action to all of our members and our allies so that we can be working together to achieve the change and prevent bad things from happening. So tonight, I am going to just hand it off to our moderator, Kim Bailey from the Tuscaloosa League, and I really appreciate her moderating tonight. And then she will introduce the panelists, and I'm going to remove my pen. Just one sec, pen, and then I'll let you carry it from here, and I'll add the other speakers. Oop. Hold on one sec.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. And I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I would like to introduce our panelists. We have Jessica Hayes, who is the Advocacy Coordinator for the Alabama Library Association, Ashley Stewart, EveryLibrary Campaign Strategist, and Karen Speck, Ozark-Dale Library Director. So a bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions, we'd like you to put those in the chat, and we will get to those at the end, probably the last 20 minutes or so. So just go ahead and do that, and then we'll wrap it all up with those questions. So we're going to get started first with each panelist telling us a little bit about themselves and the organization that they're here representing. And so let's start with Karen.
I am representing the Ozark-Dale Library, Lower Alabama. I was born in Tuscaloosa and raised in Germany, and came back to the States and to Alabama in the late 80s and been here ever since.
Karen, are you able to increase your volume? Because
lower your mic, Karen. Your mic's up on your head.
That's
I do it all the time.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. All right. Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Hayes. I am an academic librarian, have been working as a professional librarian for 15 years. I love my job. I love libraries. Public libraries have always been a huge part of my life. And I was a homeschool kid, actually homeschool graduate. learned some of my best lessons in the library with my mom. And so I live in Prattville, and if you know anything about the issues related to this fight, it's ground zero is Prattville. I got Alla into the fight. Well, they were already in the fight, but I decided to, jump in and help lead and became the Advocacy Coordinator in August of last year. I've been working hardcore with that and other grassroots groups and closely with EveryLibrary.
Okay, thank you. All right, and Ashley.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ashley Stewart. I'm the campaign strategist for EveryLibrary. I was a former public library director in a small town, and we had some challenges with some of our library programming, not so much our materials. But then we also had to do a tax levy increase. And so we know how that is whenever we ask for more money for different building projects. So I took all of that experience. I ended up running for office myself. So I'm a township trustee. And then I came over to EveryLibrary about a year ago. And so we work on library campaigns throughout the country. We are nonpartisan. We have a 501c3 side and a 501c4 side. So that way we're able to work on both sides of a campaign directly with library boards and city officials, library staff, but then we can also come to a community and help form library alliances and ballot committees and all of that great stuff. So it's a little bit about us.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all. We are going to start with Karen with our first question. I think all of us, most of us anyway, probably saw in the news about what was going on down in your library. And so if you could just kind of explain what happened and where things stand now.
Last March, I received a text message with a screenshot someone had sent saying that all these books have LGBTQ on the spine. But the text to me asked what we can do to remove these 61 books from our library. I told him to bring the guy, let the person come to me and speak to me, and he did. And I thought it was over until last August when it all exploded. We've had 2 formal challenges, but it's kind of quiet now.
So it's still in the court system then?
No, 2 formal book challenges.
Okay.
And they've been deemed to be appropriate for the teen section.
Okay. So as far as you're concerned right now, everything is just okay.
No, but it's quiet right now, so I'll take that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Jessica, so the Alabama Public Library Service recently made changes to its codes. Also, its executive board elected John Wall as chairman, and he is also the Alabama Republican Party chairman. So can you, 2 things, describe how what the changes to the codes are, and what, if any, impact you believe the new chairman will have? And you might also want to just do a short description of the library service. There might be some people on here who don't know what that is. Oh, she can't unmute again.
So the Alabama Public Library Services, or APLS, and when I refer to that, or when people refer to that, that means the Alabama Public Library Services. It is an advisory body that is located at the state level. It is a government entity. And while it does not mandate to public libraries, it does advise and it does facilitate the funding that comes from the state and goes to the public libraries. It can set, according to the AG's opinion back in early this year, 2024, he decided that the APLS cannot dictate expectations to the public libraries, but it can change its funding requirements or funding criteria and have certain expectations for certain types of policies, hours, operations, staffing, all of those kind of different things to be a requirement before they receive their state aid. So you can kind of see where this is going. Last year, Governor Ivey did propose some changes. It went through the code change process. Many of you might have been aware of the APLS letter writing campaigns that the Alabama Library Association and other groups were a part of. There was also a major hearing down in Montgomery of April of this year, where people came and gave their opinions and their thoughts on the code changes. And so at the May meeting, they made the board met to decide and discuss what changes would be made. At that meeting, additional amendments were made by a committee of 3, and it would further require some additional changes and requirements and criteria for libraries like Karen's. And I think at some point Karen might need to speak about the actual aftermath of what happened after those book challenges were put forth and things that were said or not said, but it was a whole other story. Where we're at right now is that with those amendments to the changes, to the governor's changes, it is now going to be required that to receive state aid, library boards must define terms of inappropriate and or sexually explicit terms, and then create policies that libraries will have to align with, policies like a selection criteria for the material for minors. What it basically means is that it's going to vary across the state. Karen is a great example. Karen was one of the first libraries to make changes. They have chosen one set of interpretations, and there's other libraries having other interpretations based off their local board. It's going to vary across the state, but this is generally what we are seeing. All the libraries must have pre-approval of displays to ensure they aren't marketing inappropriate books to minors. They must ensure that all spaces designated for minors under the age of 18 be free of inappropriate materials, with the exceptions given to age-appropriate materials regarding religion, history, biology, or human anatomy. They must cease purchasing any inappropriate materials that are marketed to minors under the age of 18. And then establish library cards that require parental approval before minors can check out materials from the library's adult section. And genuinely, I think many librarians, because they already existed, support the display approval policies and the parental approval for minor borrowing cards, because in many libraries across the state, those existed before the APLS code. I know that there were several friends of mine who are public librarians that had display policies, and they're like, yeah, we should definitely have these across the state, and it should be a requirement. And, I am all about listening to librarians. That is what we're here to do, is to listen to the professionals and value their experience and expertise. It is yet to be seen the deadline for when these policies should really need to be started to be submitted is October 1st. And I know that at the last APLS meeting, 75 policies, 75 libraries has submitted policies for review and approval to the APLS board. Mm-hmm. As for the recent election, honestly, it is problematic to have any political party chair serving in that position, because libraries are supposed to be apolitical and nonpartisan. So I think there would be problems if the DNC, the Alabama DNC chair, the Alabama Libertarian chair, anyone with that type of power was sitting on, the library's boards, because it should be apolitical and nonpartisan.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Karen, did you want to jump in before we move to Ashley? Do you have anything to add about the codes and kind of how that may or may not impact you?
Last September, we made policy changes, which added in the minor cards had to be, the parents had to state what they could check out. Juvenile, teen, or full access, which means they have the parent says they have access to the full library. And then we went ahead and did our policies because it didn't matter if we wanted state aid, our policies had to be changed according to, to get the funding from, because it was added to the budget, the Education Trust Fund budget. That had to be done.
Yes, thank you. I forgot about that. The Education Trust Fund, the legislators did add on a caveat to the funding, saying that adoption of the governor's amendments had to be done to receive state aid.
So what kind of an impact could that have? Like, is there a typical percentage or amount that libraries receive and that, the funding comes from them?
It depends on the size, the area you serve. Like
the population, correct?
Yeah, thank you. Ozark-Dale County is 46,000, but we have a library in Daleville, Newton, Midland City, and then of course there's one on Post, but I don't think they get funding from APLS. So ours is about 35,000 roughly that we get for our population.
Okay. All right. Great.
And Karen, did you want to speak to what the outcome of the policy change was? What happened?
My board actually did the definitions of sexually explicit and inappropriate for minors, which they took the federal and the state definitions, and they are the Miller test for minors, as applied to a minor. So it was actually a lot easier than I thought it would be. I think my board did the right thing the way they did it. And then we shut down for a month to go through the teen and juvenile sections to confirm that they are compliant.
Wow. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. Okay. So Ashley, can you tell us about the work EveryLibrary is doing in Alabama? And a lot of people may not really have heard of EveryLibrary. So
yeah. So we do campaigns. So if there's a library that needs some funding assistance or in censorship issues, we help them with a campaign. But then we also have the other side that helps form alliances as well. And so Read Freely Alabama is an alliance that's been formed in Alabama. And so if any library is experiencing issues, it's just a great network for other library staff members to just become part of that, or members of the community who just want to support the library. So Read Freely Alabama is doing great things. It also allows them, we'll have petitions that people can sign. Our national database is all library supporters across the country. And we refer it to imagine like the NRA. If something happens with gun reform, there's a mass email that goes out to all gun owners saying, we need your signature on this petition and we need you to show up at this board meeting. Well, essentially EveryLibrary is that for libraries. So if there's something going on, if it's nationwide, if it's based on a state, our network, our database full of library supporters, we can just get them activated and get them out to support our libraries. And we do school libraries, public libraries, special libraries. We try to cover all libraries. So,
okay, great. All right. So, Jessica, Two bills that impact libraries have been pre-filed for the upcoming legislative session, SB 6 and HB 4. HB 4 provides that criminal obscenity laws apply to public libraries, public school libraries, and their employees or agents. SB 6 would provide that library board members serve at the pleasure of their respective appointing authority, and by 2/3 vote may be removed by their respective appointing authority. So will you kind of go into more detail about the content of these bills and the potential impact if they're passed?
So if you've been keeping up with the, I don't want to say the drama, but I guess it's a drama of the past year, SB 6 is the resurrected bill of SB 10, Senate Bill 10. It is sponsored by Senator Chris Elliott from Baldwin County area. It is very similar to the structure of the last bill. This time they do incorporate some of the amendments that were made at the Senate level, which would require an annual report of any removed books or relocated books, and also a proviso amendment that requires a equal representation of diversity, demographic, elements, and making sure that it's representative of the full demographic makeup of the community. However, the problem is with the way that it is written, the wording of it, of the fact that it says at the pleasure of the governing body, meaning that a library board can be removed at will for whatever reason, because the political climate so dictates. It makes it become a political extension of the local authorities, and not just a nonpartisan, neutral administrators, basically, of the local library. It makes it that people can just be removed for whatever reason. It's very problematically the way that it's written, and would benefit greatly from, much more specific specifications put in there as to why board members should be removed or what are the reasons given. I do know that Senator Elliott, speaks about accountability, and which is a very important topic. That all entities should be held accountable, and I think it would be holding the legislators accountable, and it would be holding the governing bodies accountable to require them cause or reasons for the removal, and not just at the pleasure of. And House Bill 4 is the jail librarians bill. That one came at the end of the last session. This one, it would remove the obscenity exemption, which, more on the term obscenity later. This exemption was given for informative sexual education material. Actual obscenity porn is not in a library based on the good faith relationships between the community and a librarian. This would affect not just public libraries, but also school libraries, the police, local police forces, local DAs, because it would be required to investigate, just like it was investigating a drug bust, sex trafficking ring, something like that, to that extent. If certain hoops aren't jumped through, and if certain members so desire, and they have a grudge against the librarian for whatever reason, personal grudge or something like that, they could come after them through the mechanism. And it would tie up a lot of resources, a lot of time, and put a lot of people, give people a criminal record that are just doing their jobs.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. That's a lot to think about. So Karen, what What kind of an emotional toll is this taking on librarians? And have there been any threats made to the staff or the library in general?
I can only speak for my own staff as far as emotional, um, anxiety, worry, like what's going to happen next, you know, who's going to do them. I came to work one day, someone sent me a news article, and I went straight across the street and found out that what we had done was the right thing. It was last year, I believe. Just never know what's going to happen next as far as that. Um, I think I had half my staff members with severe vertigo at one time, um, migraines. I know I asked my doctor for more anxiety medicine. I've never had anxiety like this in my life. Um, no threats at our library, just negative comments like you should be ashamed of yourself. The entire board and staff should resign, and I would hate to see the library, lose funding over this mess. I mean, I'm sure there's been more, but I can't remember all of them.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So Ashley, how have local communities responded to these challenges that the libraries are facing?
Oh, she can't.
Perfect. I did the same thing. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. Let me see here. Okay. So how have local communities responded to these challenges that librarians are facing?
Yes, great question. So I have a couple slides. Am I able to show some examples of what's happening?
I think so. Kathy, can she do that?
Yeah, try it. See if it works.
All right. Can everyone see
Yes.
that? Okay, perfect. So I want to give a couple examples. These are some of the attacks that we're currently seeing on libraries. This is all just within the past 6 months to a year. And I can make it bigger as well. Let's see. So it goes from people taking out editorials and op-eds saying that the librarian is a groomer. It goes to having vote no for library groomers yard signs, bomb threats in libraries. The two mailers at the bottom are ones that have been mailed to librarians' homes directly, which is terrifying. So these are just some of the attacks that we're seeing on libraries. And again, this has just been within the past 6 months to a year. And so how people are coming together, I just talk about when you form allies and coalitions, it's working with organizations that already exist. But I want to show you an example of when people do come together. This talks about how people support the library, how they're related to the library. And I'm just going to try to get to that one slide so I can answer your question. Okay, so when people come together to support the library, you'll find alliances and supporters that you never thought of. So the top corner in the purple shirts is a group of social work students who decided to come to a local board meeting and stand up for the library. In the bottom, it's a whole group of people who came out to support the library. Alpena is one of those situations where they terminated the board. They're trying to terminate the entire board. So if you're looking for another example of where that's happening, we've had veterans come out for libraries to support the freedom to read and the freedom of speech. And the gentleman in the top right corner is a local pastor, and that was from Metropolis, Illinois, where one pastor was going after the library and trying to remove items. Another pastor in town actually stood up against the other pastor to say, no, we don't believe in censorship and book bans. And so, again, you just never know who's going to come out and support the library. And so, in an organizational way, I wanted to do the Read Freely Alabama, but then also and unions have stood up for libraries. Local businesses will come meet here for a drink and then we'll walk to city council. but equality groups, local watchdog groups, and then I do like to point out these are organizations that have sued. So we always want to emphasize there are librarians or trained professionals when they decide what materials go into a library and what doesn't, and that includes what section that those materials go in. When items begin to get removed from the library, it becomes a constitutional rights issue. It becomes a civil rights issue. It becomes an EEOC at times for the library employees. And so lawsuits are happening. And so I want to show this as well because taxpayers do not like to pay for lawsuits. There's no need for the lawsuits. And there's a way to go about this in a legal and comprehensive way that we can all work together to ensure that the libraries are doing what they are supposed to be doing, lawsuits are not taking place, and taxpayers' rights are not being violated, and their tax dollars aren't being wasted. So I just wanted to show that. I'll stop my share now. And I know that was long-winded, but I wanted to give you examples of what is happening across the country and how serious it can get.
Great, thank you. Though there is a lot going on. Okay, so Ashley again. So why do you believe book banning is on the rise? Are there some ulterior motives that we might not know about that might be helpful for us to know about?
So, you have the theories like the old town versus new town, order versus chaos or non-order. So it's like the old versus new. If new families are moving in or there's new representation in town, sometimes people get scared or uncomfortable about that, and so those titles can be removed. We've also seen some of the topics can be heavy topics, and there can be items with sexual content in them. It's not pornography, but a lot of these books that are being censored and banned are memoirs. So it's people, it could have happened, some of these situations could happen to a teen. So having those materials, it's uncomfortable, absolutely, as a parent, but it's also important to know from a social emotional side, sometimes these kids need to read that what they're going through hasn't just happened to them. And then there also is a playbook. So, and I hate to put that out there, but I think there's certain circles that are sharing a playbook of how to go after libraries because we're seeing the same exact scenario in different cities in different countries to the point where some of these library directors who are reaching out to us for the first time are like, I feel like they have a playbook or something. So it's specific enough in what these actions are that we can confirm there's communications going somewhere because we can confirm that there's even the messaging, even the way the emails are typed, even the way that the social media posts are made, it's almost identical. So again, it's a whole bunch of different scenarios, but we're just seeing all of it coming together right now.
Okay. Well, I guess you have a playbook for the rest of us to combat all of that.
Exactly.
Okay, Jessica, if you could snap your fingers and make the public and lawmakers understand one thing about this topic, what would it be?
Obscene material and actual obscenity and as we think of it as pornography, does not exist in Alabama libraries. The content that is usually pointed to or is claimed as porn is, in fact, educational, sexual material, or, as Ashley said, literature that depicts a human experience. When you go put it through the Miller test, as Karen mentioned earlier, the Miller test was established by the Supreme Court, and those three different prongs, the three different tests, especially the last part that says as a whole, there is serious or there is literary, artistic, and scientific value as a whole. So what happens, and if you're on this call and you might have heard some very concerning excerpts read or displayed or, pulled out from these materials. And, it says, oh, these library books, these are books from the library. I understand how concerning that might be. And it's like kind of turning on the Titanic, the movie Titanic. Yes, I'm a 90s kid. And, that scene and, the sketching scene, it would be like turning that on and just showcasing that, pausing it right there and not taking the entire movie as a whole. That wouldn't be considered like a Pornhub movie, right? Titanic as it is, that one scene is very problematic when you pause right there. That is what is sometimes happen when you read the content as a whole, these books that are usually brought out. Instead of this cherry-picked excerpts, these books have have artistic, political, scientific, literary value. It's sex education. It is talking about a pregnant woman. It is talking about sex trafficking and the victims of that. And you can't have that book without some tragic assault happening. I apologize. Now, sometimes, obviously, mistakes are made in library operations, and in good faith, some books should be relocated. I think Karen and any of the former librarians on this call can speak to that. There's sometimes that happens. And that's why there's relocation policies, and why having, libraries have relocation policies is a good thing to have. But this myth, this using cherry-picked excerpts it's a tactic to kind of, as a smokescreen, say, oh, all this stuff is in the library, or in the children's section, in the Most of the time, any of the spicier content is in the young adult, teen, older teen, or even in the adult section. There's been challenges of the bluest eye because it has incest, racism, and what else? SA. And in fact, they're asking it to be removed from the Dothan adult section and outlawed. So it's not just in the children's sections that they're worried about. That is sometimes a smokescreen that is used. If you have concerns about a book excerpt, visit your local library, talk to a librarian, contact an actual professional, and read and check out a copy if it's still available. And then read the whole book for yourself. Read the whole book. To use another example, I'm of the Christian faith myself, and it would be like opening up the book of the Bible and reading if you are a Christian, it would be like reading the story of Tamar and Judah. If you don't know that story, go and read it. And so that's what my whole spiel was. Sorry, I had the chat popped up and I just wanted to see what that question was, and I got distracted. But I mean, I don't want to jump to that, but that is a good point that is just made of like defining what is literary, political, artistic, scientific value. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a good answer to that right now, but it is a good point. It's like, how do you define that? I think it's just one of those things we've kind of taken for granted in our profession sometimes. And it might be something that Karen, myself, and other members of the Alabama Library Association need to look at how to define and how to explain and educate to others. And you all can help us. That's all.
Okay, great. Okay, so Karen, can you explain, so we've talked about the materials that are there and everything. Can you explain the steps you take, librarians, when acquiring these materials, and what policies do you currently have in place to protect the patrons?
Um, the steps, we have a standing order for our teen and juvenile books where the books have already been read and reviewed and set, and I give them, I checked boxes that of subjects I wanted, like easy readers, history, a graphic, what is it? Middle grade readers, kindergarten, pre-K, whatever. Then they send us those books each month. But I also get the choice to. They tell me my box is being packed, and I go in and I can look at each book, check the description of the book. I can look at reviews if I want, and make changes to the box. As far as adult books, we pretty much go with the popular authors, patron requests, and then subjects that we need more to round out the collection.
Mhm.
The other, to protect the patrons, well, as Jessica said, there's no pornography or obscenity in any library because it's illegal. But we have the books in the teen section that belong there, books in the juvenile section that belong there, and then books in the adult section. And then we have the library cards that the parents have to state exactly what their kids can check out. Now, I'm not as concerned about protecting the adults as I am about making sure that there's nothing inappropriate for the minors in the wrong section. Oh my gosh.
And Karen, what about unsupervised minor policy?
13 and under, they have to be accompanied by a parent or a guardian 19 or older.
At all times in the library?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And just because I'm curious, so you said the box is packed and you get this box. So where does that come from?
Junior Library Guild.
Oh, okay.
It's a vendor. It's a vendor.
Yes, it is.
And
it's a vendor.
That is just one vendor of many.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I was just curious. Did you just get this magic box?
Yes, it's a magic box.
Lovely.
Yes.
There's all kinds. There's Baker Taylor. There's Goby. There's
we do Baker and Taylor also for the adult books.
Okay.
But the Junior Library Guild, we've actually looked at changing to a different vendor. But that's not because of the book stuff. It's because of cost. Just ordering our kids' books from Amazon because we could get a better discount.
Mm-hmm. And these same policies, I'm going to make an assumption that they apply to digital as well as hard copies.
You mean like CD books, the audio books, or DVDs?
Books that you would like download and read like on a reader or something?
I'll jump on that, Karen.
Yes, thank you.
That would come from both the AVL and then a local library. And the AVL is the Alabama Virtual Library. Mm-hmm. That would deal with a lot of the digital content, as well as the individual libraries' agreement or working with Hoopla, Libby, some other online digital book platforms. Mm-hmm. And it would have different settings. The same policies would kind of apply. It would just look a little bit different in the procedures. And I think if there's some people on the call that have some experience, Craig, maybe he can drop that into the chat for me. And because I'm outside of the public library world, but maybe Craig can talk to how they do it up there in Gadsden. Because Karen, you don't have Hoopla, do you?
We have Libby.
Libby, okay.
But Joni's my expert on Libby.
Gotcha.
Okay. So Ashley, and I guess really any of you, but we'll start with Ashley. What concrete steps do you recommend we take to defend and advocate for libraries?
Great question. Ways you can get involved with the library is make sure you have a library card and check out items. Be very diligent, know what's going on. Check board agendas, not just the libraries, but city, county, but also, your House representatives, your Senate. Just see what's coming down the pipeline that could impact how libraries operate. Reach out to your local legislators and let them know how much you love libraries and support libraries. Join a friends group, join an alliance, any way that you get involved with the library, it's just much appreciated. So that's what I would say.
Well, Ashley stole all my suggestions. But here locally in Alabama, and I know that Ashley's platformed Read Freely Alabama. Join them, become a member. If you're a community member, if you're a librarian, come and join us with the Alabama Library Association. We're all working together. We're all that coalition that Ashley's talking about, and we're kind of, we all have this huge alliance and coalition. Um, uh,
I'm going to hop in real quick too.
Yeah,
if you are part of another organization or civic group or anything like that, please invite your librarians. I think some of the problem with some of these regulations and this misinformation is not inviting the librarians to the table. So we're on our side saying, librarians, show up and be at the table, but it helps significantly if there's people already sitting at a table, if it's Rotary or Lions Club or Chamber or any of those organizations, and you're like, you know what, we should have a library come present and explain to us different things. So that would be my recommendation too.
I think if you are a part of those civic organizations, go ahead and meet with your local library director. I would honestly go ahead and do that anyway. Go and meet with them. If for one thing, bring them chocolate and a Starbucks gift card. And maybe an adult beverage. No, I'm totally kidding. But no, but sit down and talk with them. Ask them, first establish a relationship. Then also kind of delve into, is there anything going on? Because a lot of times library directors will want to kind of keep things, I don't want to say more quiet, but they'll want it to be.
We were gagged.
They don't want to become the next Ozark. They don't want to become next. Yeah, you're welcome. They don't want to become the next Prattville. They don't want to become the next
North Shelby.
North Shelby. They want to just try to power through. Forming alliances,
radar, so to speak.
Yeah, right. Going under the radar. Jackie Nix, and I have to give a shout out to some Prattville people right here. Jackie Nix and Christina Garner and Karen Cooper. They have been showing up at our city council and county commissioners meetings probably every single time for the past year. Holding people accountable, but also not just fighting against the officials. They have formed alliances, they formed partnerships, and it's forged opportunities to get out there and to talk about the issue and to make people understand that it's not just about the LGBTQ books. It is coming for all the books. And so that is something super important, is to forge those local connections and join those, see if you can, get some like-minded groups like the League or like your community civic group to, show up at board meetings and at city councils, even if it's just, hey, y'all are doing an awesome job. We love you guys. And also monitor the policies on a library's board's website, because again, it might be trying to fly through the radar and there's going to be changes, and you want to make sure that things are staying above board, but make sure you form that relationship first, and set up a Google News alert I have the little code that I can pop in my chat here in a minute, but it does it every single day. It's searches for Alabama libraries, and it just brings up everything. It's going to get a lot of just random stuff. But then sometimes Jacob Holmes is on the call, and you'll get a Jacob Holmes article and learn what's going on in the world of Alabama libraries. And so it kind of keeps you abreast of everything that's going on.
Nice. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
So Karen, do you foresee staying in this job, in this field, if the cultural climate in Alabama continues to target librarians? And what have you heard from other of your colleagues?
Well, I mean,
have something really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to tell them about what we heard at APLS? They had 14 to 16 library director vacancies that occurred. They tried to fill some of them, but then within another month, I think the last month, July to August, they had like 4 to 10 library directors leave. And I'm probably way off on that number, but it's a dramatic. People are leaving. They're leaving.
Well, I mean, if you think back to March of 2023 when it all started in Prattville, the library director then, I think, stayed for 3 I mean, as long as she could do it, because they were bombarding her. And I would call it attacks. She was being attacked at every meeting, and that's where Andrew came in and did everything he could do. But I still enjoy my job. I don't enjoy the outside forces. I plan on staying unless my mental health or my physical health goes bad. But I do intend on staying, at least until I'm old enough to retire with some kind of Social Security. But
what about your other colleagues in your specific library? Have you?
One of them says she's not real sure that she wants to continue doing this, and this is her passion. It's heartbreaking. And then we have a volunteer who is 17 now. This is what she was going to do. Now, no, she's not going to become a librarian, and she'd be wonderful. But she just, it's too politically charged. They're turning libraries into political and
cultural.
They're actually, I was going to say religious, because they're exemptions for religion, but they're not exempting for other stuff is glaringly obvious. But what was the second part of that question?
No, that was it. It was about your colleagues.
Okay, yeah, that's all I've heard so far.
Okay.
In my library. I mean, I've heard, there's other, like she said, that have left, that have resigned. And
my best friend, I'm not going to say the library, but she was the youth services librarian coordinator. Her passion. We worked so hard to get her through library school and graduate school, and she just, loved the job. And after the attacks came on them, she is now working not in public libraries at all, and not even really in a library at all. And that was her passion.
Yeah,
and she was good at it.
That's such a shame. Ashley, have you seen this sort of trend nationwide as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have. Same thing if it's younger students that are like, I don't know if this is for me. And even if people stay, just the high burnout. I think every library conference across the country, if it's Alabama or California or Illinois, pretty much every library conference, each state pretty much has their own state library conference, but there's always a session on burnout, which is just so sad. But yeah.
And I'm not even on the front line, and I've had some rough days in my mental health. it gets hard to have people call you grimmers.
But then also building safety and patron safety
Yes.
and staff safety. I think those are a lot of the other sessions that you are starting to see now is
Yes.
how do we maintain safety in our civic spaces?
Yep,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. So this last one, I'm just going to kind of let all of you discuss it. Are any of you taking steps to protect yourself legally? And what about your organizations? And do you know of any new strategies that have been employed to protect from litigation? So, Ashley,
Not me, as I can't afford to hire a lawyer, but our library did hire someone for the book, specifically for the book challenges. They actually voted on it August 30th of last year at our meeting.
The ACLU has some wonderful resources, ACLU of Alabama particularly, and they're involved actively across the country. So sometimes if you just need a letter from them basically outlining like, hey, this is what it means when you take that oath of office. These are the constitutional rights that are getting violated or civil rights being violated. Just having something from an attorney, even if it's from the ACLU, but being proactive too is what we're recommending. Don't wait for something to happen before you go and get a letter or develop these coalitions and these partnerships. Do it now before you need it. It's never too early to get that. That's one thing that I would definitely recommend.
I'm definitely going to repeat getting connected with some of these groups like ACLU, as well as FIRE. I'm going to push my John Kraska recommendation of FIRE. It's just as it's spelled, FIRE. It is a First Amendment anti-censorship legal group. The public is aware that the Alabama Library Association is a plaintiff in the Prattville lawsuit case against the Prattville Library. And we've engaged with the Democracy Forward. That is another entity that does delve very much with this issue as well as other pro-democracy values and issues. Kathy, that's a great question. I want to jump on this right now. Kathy asked, does the county municipal government provide legal protection? The long story short is it depends. It depends. Karen, you want to take that?
Not in my case. I couldn't use the city lawyer because
your county city combo.
Yeah, I just couldn't because of the way mine exploded.
Right.
I had to get someone else.
And let me just speak to, there's like 3 different ways that in Alabama libraries can, well, I think 2 mainly. And my library friends jump on if I'm wrong. A library can be formed by a city itself, a city government, and funded by just the city itself, and it becomes a municipal government. There can then be a joint library system between the county and the city, where they have equal governance and equal funding of it. That is where you see sometimes that library wouldn't have either the county or the city. It's very confusing. It really depends on a case-by-case basis. The SPLC, thank you to the other comment about that. The SPLC, working with a coalition of groups and people, the best thing that librarians or people who are the strategies of like to protect against litigation is to bring light to it immediately. There's ways to do that without where there's protection. Using some of these channels that we have set up through this coalition, this massive pro-library coalition that we've created. And we are, eager to help connect people with the different support needs that they might have. I think that's something that didn't exist really a year ago. we have a way to kind of plug people into SPLC, ACLU, FIRE, EveryLibrary, Democracy Forward, people that can immediately know about something and have some legal knowledge that's not just my marathon of Law and Order SVU on USA back in 2007. As great as that legal education was, it wasn't, it's not what can be provided to you from these other entities. So yeah.
Okay. All right, great. So I think now we're ready to move into questions from the participants, from the audience members, so to speak. So I think Judy is going to read those off to us.
Okay. What would prevent someone from expanding the definition of inappropriate from sexually explicit to political ideas, history, and move on to the adult section?
Not much. That might be too simplistic, but I will say this, that's what they kind of try to do with broadening obscenity to include anything with sexual content. In last year's obscenity bill, I don't remember the name, HB 385. That was honestly one of the worst things about that bill was the fact that House Bill 385, the obscenity exemption, was going to start saying that anything that had anything to do with gender, because they were trying to encapsulate gender ideology and gender identity and to redefine it. The thing is, though, when they start trying to do that, to encapsulate all these other terms, it gets too vague, too broad, too unwieldy, to the point where it opens up a lot of litigation options. We'll just say that. So, I mean, it won't stop them, but the repercussions could be dramatic because they go too broad by trying to capture everything. And that was the problem when you tried to expand the obscenity term without any exemptions at all in it to include anything about gender or sexual content. I was like, well, books about pregnancy would be removed. Abstinence only books like I Kiss Dating Goodbye would be gone too, because it would all be it all is sexual content. And so, I mean, once you open that door, it starts affecting a lot more things than you know.
Does anybody else want to jump in before we move to the next question? Okay.
Okay. The minor age policy that was referenced earlier, is that a new law?
No, it is not even a requirement in APLS code. It's not. In fact, the ALA in our counter proposal to what we were trying to hopefully get in was that libraries would at least have to have one. Now, I'll say this because I had some good conversation here about dual income families. As a dual income family member, I absolutely agree with what was being said. I firmly believe, and I think everybody firmly believes here, that the local libraries should be library director and the librarians there who know their community, know what the needs are, can maybe work with, that policy. It doesn't have to be a standard age. It can be that, you have to have like at least, okay, you have to be, if you're 5 and under, some of y'all saw my kid on earlier, anybody 5 and under probably need you need the parent there. But, then as you get older, it's a different thing based on the community needs. But it is not a law at all anymore. And I think sometimes it is to the detriment because there are some times where there might be some guardians who could serve that role, or an older sister. I was the older sister who chauffeured the younger brother around. So, I mean, those kind of exceptions can be made. But there does need to be sometimes a understanding of the community. And that is why the local entity is the best one to create that policy. But right now there is no requirement and it's not required.
Okay, can you talk about the relationship of ALA and libraries with the American Library Association?
Yes. We are a chapter. I am not a member of ALA. I am no longer. We existed really before we were a part of the American Library Association. Don't quote me on that, but I know we formed in 1904. And then you could become a chapter. It's an independent chapter. We are not political. We all have different political views, ideologies. We have conservatives, we have libertarians, we have progressives, we have moderates, we have Christians, we have non-Christians, we have Catholics, we have people of all faiths represented there. And so the Alabama Library Association is very much its own entity with its own bylaws and its own board with its own voting members, and there's no requirement to be a member of ALA and be a member of the Alabama Library Association.
There have been several questions and concerns expressed in the chat related to current policies across Alabama regarding minors and their parents related to libraries and parental supervision. What's happening in Alabama about that?
It kind of goes back to it kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. It really does vary across the state. Some libraries don't have an unsupervised minor policy. Some have it set to 12 years old or younger. Needs to have some supervision. Some are more draconian, some are more, and it depends on what their problems are, what some of the issues are presenting themselves in the community. I know that I have one dear friend who's the director at a rural Alabama library. And, the stated rule is that, anybody under the age of 12 needs to have a supervised person, unless you've written off consent that you can run to the store, or a printed note that says, hey, I'm running down to the store, the Dollar General, and then coming right back. It is based on what the library is at that time. So it's really going to depend on your local library.
And I also like to give an example of outside the library profession. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure on the librarians being the supervisor for the kids, which we are in some, it just happens, we are. But I equate it to a parent knowing their kid is going to go down to an ice cream parlor and they happen to order nuts on their sundae, but they're allergic to nuts. But then the mom gets mad at the ice cream parlor attendant because they allowed them to get. So it's a funny way of looking at it, but it's also, it's trying to blame somebody for just doing their job when maybe the conversation needs to be on if Timmy can or can't go, and parents still have access to what every child is checking out. You sign that consent when you issue the library card. And so it's more so of, if you're going to allow the kids to go by themselves, make sure you know what they're getting checked out on their library card. So.
Okay, Kim, this is the last one that I've got. Have there been any reputable independent articles, journalism, putting a spotlight on the attack on our libraries and librarians?
And Angie Hayden already answered that. Thank you, Angie. Jacob Holmes of the Alabama Political Reporter. If you want to know why Alabama knows about this issue, it's because of Jacob Holmes. And I think everybody needs to take a moment right now and do a round of applause for Jacob, because he was the one to first identify that there was a problem going on in Prattville, and he didn't stop reporting on it. It was then picked up by Ralph and I'm going to butcher Chapaco, and at the Alabama Reflector. And Walisha Morris at AL.com back in the spring wrote an amazing in-depth expose of this whole issue and tied so many components together. And if I can get that to Kathy, I will get you all the link to that article. There's also been some work done. Those are the top three. I hate that Aunt and G already answered that for me, but dang. Anyway, but Karen, you might have had some other people that you've talked to.
I'm sorry, I lost my volume. I had a cat bothering me. Sorry.
The question was about, I believe, who is reporting on it, right? Yeah.
Oh, Walisha, Jacob Holmes, Craig Munger. You know, I mean, that's three main ones that I've seen.
Mhm.
But
Okay. All right. So I will just ask quickly, do you guys have any parting comments? Things that you really have to get off your chest that we didn't address? Anything in these last few minutes? Ashley.
Yeah, I just thank you so much for having me. Please consider EveryLibrary if you are a library that needs some assistance, if you're a library supporter who wants to help. EveryLibrary, we do have a policy think tank journal as well. It's the Political Librarian. If you are interested in anything politics and library related, we have a free journal if you just search Political Librarian. And we try to constantly put different blog posts out there or do different fun events. So that's one thing I would say. Thank you again.
Great. Karen?
thank you. I appreciate it, but I can't think of anything else. Sorry.
Jessica?
Just to say thank you again. Answer Kathy's question. Are there any laws or rules in the books that threaten or remove funding from libraries? Except for the state code changes that tie state funding to the adoption of these new code changes. Not anything specific because a lot of it does come from the local areas. So make sure you're looking at the local areas budgets that are being submitted at this time. It is being submitted across the board, and make sure that your funding is the same as it was last year. All of this stuff is public records. There's so much power in the hands of you all through public records request, through showing up at public comments and saying, hey, how much did we spend on the library budget last year? Hey, how much are you spending this year? The power is in the people. And that is what the League of Women Voters, I'm a proud member of, by the way, is all about. And don't be afraid to put in public records request for the budget or just to go on your website. You can contact me at any time for any information or more conversations. I've loved some of the conversations that were started here, like defining what literary and scientific value would look like. Love that. And how we can educate the public even more. We can't do this alone, and we need everybody's help, especially in the next few months. Thank you for this opportunity, though, to talk to you all.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. And I'm going to turn it back over to Kathy to kind of wrap us up. But again, great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, hold on one moment. I'm trying to get things situated. I wanted to, just one moment. I'm going to bring it back. If I can figure out the rest of it. There we go. All right. So let me come up. It's so many people. I'm so excited that we've had such a good audience tonight. And I want to just really kind of bring this all back to voting, because everything relates to voting. And that's the first step in civic engagement for a lot of people, is showing up at the ballot box and making your voices heard. I will say, if you live here in Huntsville, Alabama, there is a runoff election tomorrow, and it's for municipal elections, two city council and two. I may have this wrong, but there's a runoff, and there is a runoff on one of the districts and unfortunately, I think it's District 1, but unfortunately, during the last election, we only had 7.8% of the registered voters show up. And these are school board positions and city council. In In the primary elections, we had a dismal turnout. Even in the area in this congressional district 2, it was very low. And that is going to cause us so many problems if we can't get people to the polls. And so when you start talking to your friends about the fact that they need to show up and vote, what we've talked about tonight is directly related to voting. And every single election, no matter what level, at local levels, is directly affecting your education, your health and security, and your libraries. So, and at your state level, you can see from the discussion tonight, when we have our state elections in 2026, you know, these people making these laws that we're going to be fighting against next year, they're the ones that are going to be on the ballot. And so don't forget it. And also don't forget to get organized and to get your community organized so that you can make your voice heard and talk to them during the legislative session, but also just make sure they know you're a voter and that you're not going to forget if they don't meet your needs and they're not doing what you believe is right, then they need to understand that there are consequences. And so voter turnout is critical. And so that in addition to advocacy and trying to fight it at the legislature, voter turnout, and I get on my soapbox on this all the time, and I wanted to just do it again because November 5th is the election, general election, and in Alabama, October 21st is the cutoff for getting registered to vote. So if you haven't checked your voter registration, you need to go out and do that now so that you'll have time to be able to update it if you're inactive or if you've somehow dropped off the voter rolls. And take your friends to the polls. We want a record turnout for this year, next year, the year after, and from there on out. So thank you all. And I want to thank the panelists and Kim, because this has been really a fantastic presentation. And we look forward to working with you to basically fight back the darkness. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.